show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go. Bass in your face. Bass in your face.
Hey guys, it's Mizzy and I'm a mixed girl on a mixed up world. Welcome to the show. It's been a while and I apologize for that. Last week I talked, I think I was telling you guys about how I get Botox for my migraines, and I was about to get them. Well, my Botox appointment got canceled like 4 times, and I went 6 weeks without having my medication. My doctor had a really bad case of pneumonia, and they couldn't fit me in anywhere else with any of the other doctors. And so I was left to be sitting with, bad migraines. And it wasn't even the migraines, because I'm, not that you ever get used to having migraines, but when you suffer from migraines, sometimes you get the fog, and that was the worst part about it. My thinking wasn't clear, so it was hard for me to do a live. But I'm back. I want to tell you about how I'm going to do things during the Karen Reed trial, because, obviously a lot of eyes are going to be on that. We have some things coming up with Robert Devine. So I'm going to, when the post-commission hearing on June 6th happens, I'm going to stream that in the morning. Actually, it's at 1 o'clock that day. And I'll post about that again soon. And on June 6th and 7th will be his post-commission proceedings. So I will stream that too. But throughout the Karen Reed trial, I'm planning on doing streams either Sundays or Mondays. And then throughout the trial, there's a lot of characters that are in both cases. So when those people testify, I want to stream that night or once, with that Monday or Sunday stream, I want to showcase some of the stuff that they testified to, because it is relevant to Sandra's case. And you can see, if this person, we can judge for ourselves if we think this person is shady and whatnot. So that's what I'm going to do during the trial. I won't be like live streaming Karen's trial or anything like that. I'm going to just keep it like Sandra adjacent. So it'll be all about these people who are in both cases. And there's like 11, maybe 12 people that are in both cases. So I felt that was a good thing for us to how to handle it, because I want to do streams, but I know that a lot of you who do follow Sandra's case are also following the Karen Reed case. So I can blend those two together. And if there's any other things that we have coming up, we do have a standout for Sandra coming up. It's her birthday standout. It will be in Stoughton on June 17th. Sandra's birthday, it'll be May 17th in Stoughton, right across the street from the town hall. It'll be from 1 to 4. And it's to, make sure we're keeping Sandra's name out there. We've taken a little time off with the holidays, and then with, I was sick, and, just trying to get our heads together about some things. And we've been working on some projects. I can't announce those right now, but Barb and I have some big announcements coming. Once we get the all clear to fully announce it, I'll make sure to get that information out to you. But so we would love to get a good crowd on May 17th. So if you are in the local area, please come join us. We're going to have a contest for whoever makes the best homemade sign, and there will be a prize. So if you're in the area, come join us. There's a core group of people who come, and we'd love to have you. Anybody's welcome. So come join us. So I think that's all I have for announcements and then explaining what's been going on with me. But I apologize that I haven't been back, but I'm going to try now that I am getting my medication again. I'm going to try to, like I said, do Sundays or Mondays. And once we get into football season, it'll be Mondays, unless the Patriots play on Sundays. I'm a huge football fan. I play in a football pool, so I like to watch Sundays I dedicate to football. So let's get on with the program part of the stream. So I felt it was important. I'm sure there's a lot of streamers out there who are going to be talking about the upcoming Karen Read trial. And I know, like, the Glare right now is doing a fundraiser for Karen. So, after you're done watching me, if you want, scoot over there to support over there. But I wanted, and I know a lot of creators, when they're going to be talking about the case tonight, since it's the night before Karen's trial starts. But I kind of wanted to take it from a different standpoint. I wanted to talk about how the Massachusetts State Police failed both Sandra and John and Karen, but I want to focus in on the two people who were murdered. And for those who don't know, I am a part of Free Karen Read, but I kind of tend to stay over in my Sandra Birchmore side because it's a lot of work over here. I know you probably can't tell, but I am wearing a pink shirt and in honor at Karen, and I just want to show you what it says. It says freedom, and the read is in red to make it stand out. So I am a Karen supporter. I got to meet her right around Thanksgiving, and I got to thank her for fighting. I said, because you decided to fight, it made it easier for me to fight for Sandra. So I told her, you weren't just fighting for you were fighting for Sandra too, because we were able to use Karen's case to get Sandra's case out there more. And I'm a firm believer that these cases have a lot of connective tissue. They're obviously two very different cases, but they have a lot of connective tissue. And I'm going to talk about that today. And what I mean about that, it's the people who are, I don't have the chat up. Sorry, guys. I had it up earlier, but I forgot to keep it up. Hey, everyone. Sorry. I didn't have the chat up. Sorry. Thank you, Barb, and thank you for being here. Hey, Bird Chick. How is everyone doing tonight? I hope everyone is doing well. Good to see you guys. I know there's going to be a lot of people on the replay, so thank you for coming and watching the live, and also thank you for watching the replay, and I appreciate it. If you're in the chat, or even if you're watching the replay and you don't already follow me, please go out of the chat, subscribe to my channel so you will and get the notifications so you'll know when I go live. And please like the video, because that'll help push the video out there more, especially with small creators. It's very, very important to make sure you like their videos and you subscribe, and you and even comment after the show's over. Scoot over and make a comment. It helps push. When you're a small channel, every single inch you get, it helps the channel so much. No, I didn't. For Christmas for my mom a couple years ago, I bought her a t-shirt that said freedom, but it had books. It had to do with all books being canceled. And I was looking at it one day. I was like, you know what? I'm going to look through all the shirts that, on the same page. And it's on, I think it's TeePublic that I got it on. And I was like looking for one, because I plan on going down, maybe a couple times before it gets too hot, down to to hang out with boots on the ground for a little while. And I was like, oh, the shirt's perfect. It's the Statue of Liberty, holding her torch, and, it says freedom, and the reed is blocked out a little bit more. So I was like, I have to get it. I have another tank top. Oh, thank you so much. I have another tank top that it's a dog tank top, but it says freedom on that too. So it kind of worked out well. And it's a more of a fuchsia, a brighter pink than this. I don't know if you guys can tell I'm wearing pink, but it doesn't matter. It says freedom and read. But anyway, back to what I was saying. I want to look at look at the case from the perspectives of the, how the victims were failed, how the investigations, they basically ensured that I believe that John isn't going to get justice. Hopefully someday he will. But for the longest time, Sandra wasn't getting justice till the feds decided to step in and, investigate Sandra's case and get Matthew Farrell off the streets. But I feel sometimes that, especially the way the Commonwealth is trying the case, that the victims get lost in the trial. Like trial 1, John was lost in it. Like the man who was murdered was lost. And Karen was kind of lost in it too. It was mostly about defending the McCabe's and the Alberts. So I want to look at some, I have a couple videos to show you guys. And I have some photos and stuff to show you guys too. So I'm going to just give me a second so I can bring up my first set of pictures I want to show you guys. I feel when I was doing my I call them canned episodes because they're produced and then they're put out. They were my show was called, A Mixed Girl, A Mixed Up World is my channel, but I was calling it Every Victim Deserves Justice. And I firmly believe that's why I was doing what I was doing. And that's why I did what I did for Sandra, because, people who are murdered and their cases go unsolved. It's one thing if a case goes unsolved and the police department did everything that they could. But like in Sandra's case, they didn't do everything they could. In John's case, they didn't do everything that they could. And in both cases, they actively went against good policing to ensure that these cases wouldn't be solved. So that's why I wanted to look at these cases from that perspective. Every victim does deserve justice. And it's not right that Sandra Birchmore went that long without getting justice. It's not right that, unless the feds are able to come in, I know that there's that it's been said that the feds aren't investigating anymore, but I don't know if I believe that, because I can sit here today and tell you guys with 100% certainty that the feds are still investigating Sandra's case. So I don't know, it kind of rings hollow to me that with such a high profile case, they wouldn't at least release a 2-sentence, the case into Officer John Okeefe's, murder has been closed, and they could leave it at that. I don't feel like they would have, put this information out through Morrissey's office or the Canton PD. And we know both things are shady. So okay. Absolutely, Mizzy. They weren't implicated. Sorry, I can't read. I forgot to plug my thing in. They weren't incomplete. They were I can't read. Sorry, my glasses stink. They were deliberately covering up the evidence. I bought a thing to put on my computer, but because I haven't been doing this for so long, I completely forgot to bring it up. I agree. They were actively covering up this case, or actively being dereliction in their duties. You know, how they were in both cases. It's just, that's not how policing should be. You know, I watch a lot of true crime, and I don't break down a lot when I there are times when I break down for Sandra's case, but a lot of times I break down for Sandra's case when I see police officers doing everything that they could to solve a crime. And that I cry, it makes me cry, and I say, I'm so sorry. It's going to make me tear up here. I'm so sorry that you didn't have these investigators on your case. I'm so sorry that, you know, people, these officers didn't care enough to, you know, protect you even in death. You know, it's not right that these two cases had the turnout that they did. And it's just funny that in these two cases that the alternative, you know, suspects are police officers, you know, so it does make you say, wait a minute, this is weird. You know, and that's the thing, you know, you don't have to agree with me that about being, you know, a Karen Read supporter. You don't have to. But as a John Okeefe and the Okeefe family supporter, you need to actually admit that what the Massachusetts State Police and what the Canton Police Department, and especially Proctor, what they did was ensure that nobody could be convicted of John's death. And that is wrong. It's their job to actively work a crime scene. It's their job. Like, okay, hold on, I want to share this. I just want to have them on the screen while I talk about them, because it's very important to see their faces as we talk. Share. So it's very important for us to look at their faces. They're the faces of two victims who were murdered in the town of Canton, Massachusetts. They're two victims that, you know, didn't get the investigation that they should have got. They're two victims that were re-victimized by the Massachusetts State Police and by Canton Police Department from the shoddy job that they did. And it's not right. It is the Massachusetts State Police job to ensure victims get justice. And anyone who is an Officer John Okeefe supporter and a supporter of that family should be even more angry than Free Karen Read. They should be irate that this is how, you know, Proctor conducted an investigation. It's how Canton Police Department conducted an investigation. It's how the Massachusetts State Police conducted an investigation. And it's how Michael Morrissey's office handled two high-profile cases. Both cases, they should have brought in a special prosecutor. And I'm not talking about like a prosecutor that's been on Turtle Boys. I'm talking about a real, you know, prosecutor that could have helped investigated this case, worked with another Massachusetts State Police unit to ensure that these victims got justice. And, you know, tomorrow starts another day of the Karen Read trial. So that is why I wanted to do this episode tonight. Because like I said, every victim deserves justice, and justice has been denied to these two victims. I just want to put their faces more up on screen. So we're going to go through some stuff, like I said, and we're going to watch 2 videos, and then we'll, I'll answer questions as we go on. If there's anything you guys want to ask right now, that's cool. I'll try to answer them. Barb is in the chat, and she knows the case very well since Sandra is her cousin, and she can answer questions if I don't answer them while I'm reading stuff. Let me put this up on the screen. The MSP's Nicarino found nothing of interest in the text messages he looked at. Handed over the electronics to the FBI, and they found the thousands of texts between the 3 officers and Sandra. Not only that, Fanning did look at those. Trooper Fanning looked at those text messages. He's the one who went through them, and he did nothing. He actively lied to the family. Trooper Fanning is a piece of work. So let me get to the other photos I have. Okay. I don't know. Have you guys ever heard of victimology? I used to watch a lot of the show Criminal Minds, and they talked about victimology a lot. And it was, basically looking into how a crime happens and how a victim was able to be victimized and their murder happened. And, it's very important to look at that. Victimology is the study of victimization, including psychological efforts on victims, the relationship between victims and offenders, and the interactions between victims and the criminal justice system, that is the police and the courts and correctional officials. The connection between victims and other social groups and institutions such as the media, business, and social movements. And we are the social movement side of that. So we got to make sure that we're on point, we're putting out correct information, and we're helping, not hurting. So that's why we, at the Justice for Sandra Birchmore group, we try to ensure that the information that we are putting out is correct. We're not going to get it right all the time, but we need to make sure that we put out the best information that we can. And right now, the best way for us to do that is, talk about the Stoughton internal investigation, and also talk about the FBI affidavit. If you haven't read those, I recommend going to our website, and I forgot to bring that up. I'll try to bring that up while we're watching one of the videos, so I could drop that in the link in the chat. The Justice for Sandra Birchmore website, where Barbara's gotten all the most important documents up, the FBI reports, the affidavit, the Stoughton report, the Canton reports, and the Massachusetts State Police report. All that, the most important stuff is up on our page now. So if you haven't read those reports, I recommend go checking them out. I recommend that you take a few deep breaths, maybe meditate before you do the FBI affidavit, because it's pretty nasty. And I've said that many times. So this is why I wanted to do this, because it's very important for these things to, to talk about how the victims were in their life. So I made a couple slides, and this is, the core of the officers that were on Officer John Okeefe's investigation. We know who this is. Michael Proctor, Tully, I should say Lieutenant Tully, Sergeant, actually, I think he's a lieutenant now. Lieutenant Lank. Buchanek, I think that's how you pronounce it. I always second guess myself because my name is my brain is thinking what Turtle Boy calls him, and I try to not do that on my show. I do in regular life, but you know, I put Gallagher on there because he was the supervisor for Canton on the day John O'Keefe's body was found. Our friend Nick Garino, I like to call him Tricky Nicky. And, you know, I put the emblem for the Massachusetts State Police, the Canton patch, and then Chief Rafferty of the Canton Police Department. You know, it's important for us to show those faces because those are the faces of who were derelict in their duties to get justice for Officer John O'Keefe. Now, we all have to like really sit in this. The fact that when they found out that, first of all, Jen, when she called, she should have said that he was a police officer. But when they arrived, when Officer Seraph got there, he was told that this is a Boston police officer. A call should have went out, officer down. And he could have put over the radio, I have Boston police officer John O'Keefe. We need all hands on deck. And at that point, you know, the fact that Buchanek and Proctor both said they had to shovel out their driveway when there was only like maybe 3-4 inches at the most of snow. Come on, we're all from New England, or I'm from New England. I don't know everybody who's on here, but growing up in New England, you know that you can pull out of your driveway with that amount of snow. You know, you don't have to shovel your driveway out. There is no reason why they didn't get to that scene. There is no reason why when it should have been called in, and there would have been, if this was done properly, there would have been a call to have almost every officer on Canton PD come in. There would have been officers from Stoughton coming. There would have been officers from Sharon coming. There would have been almost every state trooper in the area from like the Milton barracks. They would have had that road blocked off. They would have had two state trooper cars or a Canton and state trooper car parked in front of that driveway all day because it was a fellow brother who was down. And if you don't think that would have happened, you're out of your mind, because that's what would have happened if this was a normal case. They would have made sure that crime scene was protected the whole day. They would have cleared that whole area. They would have taken pictures and they would have cleared that place that morning because they knew the storm was raging. They knew that at that point it was going to start being like a couple inches of an hour, or at least an inch an hour. There is no way they wouldn't have called for that. They would have put out a call, officer down, whether John O'Keefe was on duty or not. He's like Bob just said, the thin blue line, it's the brotherhood. They would have called that in. Why wasn't that call made? Why was he never treated like, and he's hardly ever referred to as a police officer? Why was he not treated like an officer, a fellow brother in blue down? That's a question that needs to be answered. Okay. These two clowns. Actually, let me skip to this picture and I'll go back to that one. So we have, I gotta look on my screen. So we have, I wasn't even able to put up most of the investigators. I can't find a photo of Trooper Dunn. I would love, if anybody has ever seen a photo of Trooper Dunn, I would love to have that, especially for our posters. Up in the right-hand corner, we have murderer and pedophile Matthew Farwell, former disgraced Stoughton Police Department officer Matthew Farwell. And then we go down in the right-hand corner. That is, Matthew Farwell with his disgraced brother, William Farwell. And then right next to them, we have the Massachusetts State Police patch. Above that, we have Sandra with pedophile and disgraced former Deputy Chief Devine. And across from that, we have, or next to that, we have, Michael Morrissey, the DA. And then next to that, we have Robert Devine and Michael Morrissey. Now, in 2016, there was a case, there was another scandal that Robert Devine was in. And he was having an extramarital affair with a victim who he picked up, he met her from as she was a victim. And that scandal happened in 2016. And that coincidentally is when the Explorers program was disbanded in Stoughton. Now, Michael Morrissey, it turns out that Robert Devine and his wife were doing shady stuff, and they were manipulating things to make it look like this woman was stalking him. And he even got a restraining order against her and broke the restraining order himself. And Michael Morrissey, he should have been charged. Like, Robert Devine should be sitting in jail, or at least was put in jail, or at least even got probation, got kicked off the force and got probation for that. So he was the only thing he got was a demotion. And I think if any other officer did what he did, he wouldn't have got a demotion. He would have been fired. So I don't like to say the victim's name because, she dropped off the face of the earth. I understand why, and I know I already talked about this picture, but in the center, we have Michael Morrissey. He's the center of the storm. He's the one who controls everything. He's the one who controls why there wasn't charges against Sandra. And my friend Fanny, actually, let me talk about Tricky Nicky. So as we know, Nick Garino is the one who got the extraction of Matthew Farwell's phone, and he found no information on his phone about Sandra Birchmore when there was 32,000 plus text messages with Sandra, between Sandra and Matthew. And my friend Fanning, he was the lead supervisor on the case. Trooper Dunn did a lot of the legwork in this case, but whenever it came to interviewing any of the police officers, and when it came to interviewing some victims, Fanning was there for that. So he always managed to make sure that he was there for the important interviews, like interviewing the 3 officers and interviewing, like I said, a few victims. And because I feel like they thought that the other interviews were insignificant because they weren't going to charge them. So let me see what's going on in the chat. Yes. His full name is Matthew Dunn. I think I found something on him, but I didn't find a picture. But I don't want to post anything because I don't if it's not him, but it kind of sounds like it might be. But I would love to get a photo of him. If anybody wants to do a little deep dive and get me a photo of him, I would love it. Like I said, I would love to put him on one of our posters. And we have some we've made signs that say fire fanning, and there's a bunch of other signs that I plan on making too. So yeah, we would love for him to, although he is on the witness list in the Karen retrial, so hopefully he is testifying. So let me go back one photo. Now, these two guys, Trooper Fanning, or I should say Lieutenant Trooper Fanning, or Trooper Lieutenant, I don't know which way you should say it, but Trooper Fanning and former disgraced Massachusetts State Trooper Michael Proctor. They have a lot of similarities. Neither of them should have been on the cases that they were on. Neither of them should have been on these cases. And the question is, why were they allowed to? Now, in a normal place, I think they would have left the case. I think they would have recused. And the thing is with Fanning, he couldn't hide his stuff. It was public knowledge. Oh my God, his name just went out of my head. Proctor, he could hide it a little till the truth came out. So by him saying he didn't know the Alberts or the McCabe's, he could hide that till, people started digging. But Trooper Fanning, his was all out in the open. Trooper Fanning was a former Stoughton police officer. That should have been enough to have him recused. He worked with Robert Devine. Oh, thank you, Linda. Thank you. That's so kind. He worked with Robert Devine. He left the Stoughton Police Department, I believe, in 2005. And I think he was there about 5 years. And if that's true that he was there for about 5 years, he would have probably met the Farwell brothers. There's another thing I would love for people to dig. If you feel like, maybe sipping on some wine and do some deep dive. I've been trying to connect to find out if the Farwell brothers played hockey. There is somebody I have to talk to, but who does play hockey, and I keep forgetting to send that person a message. But Fanning plays hockey, and he has still been playing with the Stoughton Police Department hockey team when they do their big game fundraiser games against the firemen. So they do charity. A lot of police departments do that with they do charity events with the firemen, and they play, whether it be hockey or baseball or whatever. So if anybody wants to dig into that, that would be wonderful if somebody could, dig into that. It's stuff that I've dug into, but I've been having a hard time fully digging into it. It's also something where if I could get, I haven't been able to, I have a way to look into. Fanning's older than the Farwell brothers, so it wasn't like in high school they crossed. Somebody told me that they might have played baseball together. So I don't know. There's a lot of, but when he left in 2005, if he was there for 5 years, he would have been there when the Farwell brothers were going through the Police Explorers program. Because they were in high school, and they were working with Robert Devine running the Police Explorers program. He was their deputy chief and the lieutenant. So they would have been there all the time. I guarantee he knew them from that. But also, Matthew Farwell was a detective. There would have been cases that they would have had to turn over to the Massachusetts State Police. He would have had to have interaction with the Massachusetts State Police unit, the CPAC unit under Morrissey. So he shouldn't have been on this case. And when it comes to Michael Proctor, when somebody's mother says that the Albert family is like a second family, you should have recused. But the question is why? Why did they want to stay on these cases so bad? Why? I can't fully answer that, but I have my suspicions. We all have our suspicions. But it's wrong that they stayed on these cases. Not only for the fact that if there was shadiness going on, it's also for that to ensure a case is held to a higher standard, to make sure that the defense can't come in and say, well, your family is really close with the Proctor family is close with the Albert family, especially when an officer is down. You want everything to be, above the board. You want when an officer is murdered, yes, he was off the clock. But when a fellow brother in blue is murdered, you want to make sure that you do your best work. And they weren't. They were doing shoddy work on both cases. So the two of these men have a lot in common. It's just that Trooper Proctor's BS was more blatant as time went on with the Karen Reed case. So these two men are the epitome of an officer holding themselves to a higher standard and saying, I can't work on this case. It would be one thing if they answered the phone and said, okay, yes, I'll have if a witness called and it was Fanning who answered the phone and it was a witness for Sandra Birchmore. They answered the phone and they took a message and said, yeah, you know what, I will give your name and number to the agent, the trooper in charge, and they will get back to you. That's different. But when you shouldn't be on a case, just to show that there's nothing to see here, I did nothing wrong, we were above the board, they should have both recused. We all know this. But it's weird in these two cases that there are two figures in this case, like these two guys, that both should have recused. And both, like Sandra's case, when they finally do the case, he's going to be an obstacle. He's going to be fodder for the defense. Trooper Fanning, why didn't you recuse from this case? You were a former Stoughton police officer. That's why recusals are very important. It's to ensure that the investigation is handled properly, and it's to ensure that the prosecution of this defendant is handled properly, and that you never want to be giving a defense an in. And that's what in both of these cases that these two men did. Oops, wrong way. Oh, yeah, we've gone through all of these. So I'm going to go back to the chat for a second. Yeah, but I think it's because the feds, when they investigate a case, like Sandra's was they took basically her murder and plucked it out of the whole case. They did her murder as basically a separate case of everything that happened to Sandra. So to get this man off the streets. So they picked it up and plucked it out. That's why Sandra's was easy to be them to prosecute or get you know a get him into the courts and file charges against Matthew Farwell. When you have a huge conspiracy and they're trying to find out if the DA's office is involved and Massachusetts State Police are involved and all these witnesses are involved, and that they had to get ARCA to do their portion of the case. It takes a long time, and the feds don't bring a case to trial unless they are 100% that they can prove it. That's why they have such a high conviction rate. So they're not, and I mean, like, big investigations like this can take years and years. Yes, all of us want it done so much faster. We all see it in front of us. The fact that the ARCA people came over to Karen. Well, they were with the TUI report, they were given to both the defense and the prosecution. So the fact that they even they even did a TUI report because they felt so strongly that Karen was being railroaded. But they also want to ensure that when they're ready, that they're able to bring charges. They want, like I said, they want to make sure everything is above board. They want to make sure they have, I'm going to use a bunch of cliches, all their ducks are in a row, everything, they dotted all their T's in their I's. They're very meticulous. They're very slow. And I'm not trying to bring up Turtle Boy, but I'm going to use the tortoise and the hare. The hare gets there fast, but the tortoise chugs along, and the hare doesn't always make it there. The tortoise is the one who wins that race. So yes, we all, I mean, because it's such a, trust me, I want this to be over for Karen. I don't want Karen to be going through what she's going through. But like she said a few times, that she was the right person at the wrong time. They didn't think they thought this, she'll take a plea deal, type deal thing. And they didn't realize that, I'm not calling her out by her name, but they didn't realize that Karen Reed is a bad bitch. Like, she is a boss. Like, the way she walked in and stared down Brennan in open court, like that's a woman who stands with her 10 toes down and is like, come for me, bring it. And I believe that's what her father said and Karen said last week to the press, bring it. She's a strong woman. And, I said to her brother when I met them last September, I was like, it's so funny because Karen is such a tiny woman, but there's so much she has so much strength in her. And some of that comes from her upbringing. Her family, her parents are lovely. I didn't get to spend much time with her dad, but I spent a long time with her mom, and she's a lovely woman. But also I think some of that comes from when you have health issues, you learn this inner strength to get through the day. And I know when she was younger, I know she still has her health issues, but when she was younger, she really went through it and had to have a few operations. And when you're somebody who lives with chronic illnesses like MS and her other issues, you get this strength in you, and you learn how to embrace your power. You learn how I'm not saying it well. You really learn how to be strong, because you have to be strong when you deal with chronic illnesses all the time. Trust me, I deal with them every day of my life. You learn to get this inner strength, and you can't, because you have to, I'm going to start swearing. I try to be good, but I'm a potty mouth. But you try to say, fuck the noise outside of me, and I'm going to do me, and I'm just going to be here and be strong. You learn you have to be a boss bitch. You learn, Because if you don't, and if you don't protect yourself, like especially with MS, and I have fibromyalgia, you get the fatigue, you get the pain, and those things, you have to have this strength inside of you to get through the day sometimes. And, like I said, Karen is a boss. Yeah, thank you. It, it, uh, it's, it's so many people, that deal with chronic illnesses or even things like cancer or diabetes. They learn to have an inner strength because you have to be able to, you have to continue on. So I think some of that comes with their upbringing. She's a very focused and analytical person because she had to be in her career. And also, like I said, the health had stuff to do with that too. Let me go to the chat again. So, I want to go back to this because I want to talk. The FBI should have gotten them by now. I said it on a show on Friday, but it's been something that I've been thinking about. How they charged Matthew Farwell. He was charged for murdering a witness. And I am a believer that John went in the house. And if that's the case, they had to have put him out on the lawn. Now, in Sandra's case, Matthew plotted and planned, and he, he made arrangements to get into her apartment. And, he even looked at, the door fixtures in her closet. He looked at the bathroom because I think he was looking for a place to where he could put her after he did what he was going to do. In John's case, that's not there. I think, from watching the waterfall video with Higgins yelling and motioning for John to come over, and then the text message that he sent to John, are you coming over here, or however he worded it. I don't think they went into that saying we're going to murder John. I think it was a fist fight, drunken guys with a lot of testosterone who took it too far, and that was the end result. But the prosecution is bringing in a neurologist who is going to say that John Okeefe would have lived if Karen had stopped and she called for an ambulance. Well, it can be, that'll be flipped on its head. At least that's what I think the defense should say. Our theory is that he went in the house. So if John Okeefe could have lived, and they didn't, they put him on the lawn and didn't call an ambulance, isn't that negligence? So, and I was saying on Friday that, they could get these people in the same way they got Matthew Farwell. The act of putting John on the lawn and not calling for an ambulance is murdering a witness against you. Just like Matthew Farwell murdered a witness against Sandra. Yes, Matthew Farwell's was planned, but it wasn't planned out, but it like long drawn, planned out 2 weeks of planning, but it was, that decision was made. And in that decision, am I freezing? Sorry, I'm freezing on my screen. I don't know if I'm freezing for you guys. In that decision, in putting John out on the lawn, that is them murdering a witness against them. So they could go after these people for the same thing they went after Matthew Farwell. if they have the goods, if they have all the information that can prove that, you know, the people in the house are the ones who did this to John, which, you know, if Karen didn't do it, who else did it? And she dropped him off there. So it had to have been somebody in the house. So I've been thinking about that a lot. So I hope that's what the FBI has planned, you know. Sorry, I gotta get some lip gloss. You know, John O'Keefe deserves justice, just like Sandra deserves justice. You know, again, like I said at the beginning, every victim deserves justice. Thank you, Barb. Every victim deserves justice. And, you know, everything that these two, you know, people who are no longer with us went through, they both, you know, Sandra was disrespected in life so much, and they disrespected her in death. And in John, they disrespected John too in death, because they didn't care about the cop that was on the lawn. They cared about the cop that lived at 34 Fairview. And they both deserved better. And yes, Barb just posted the website. Please go check out our website. Barb did an amazing job on it, and she updates it all the time. Where, like I said, I'm going to show you guys the flyer for Sandra's birthday standout. But again, they both deserved more than what the Canton Police Department, and especially what the Massachusetts State Police and Michael Morrissey's office did. It's wrong. And we all should be upset. Whether you're somebody who thinks Karen did it, you guys should be upset too. If you're somebody down the middle, somebody that you don't have a feeling either way, you just don't know what happened, so you don't want to give an opinion either way, you should be angry. Because this isn't what we pay, you know, police officers to do, and troopers to do, and district attorneys to do. We pay them to protect and serve and solve crimes when they happen. And that includes murder. And I've said it a bunch of times. I've said it on a bunch of shows. I don't know if I've ever said it on my own channel, that I believe because, so in 24 months, there were 3 cases. There was the Just on Roots case, Sandra Birchmore, and John O'Keefe. That's a short period for 3 high-profile cases. But when it comes to John and Sandra's, you know, I firmly believe, and even saying the Just on Roots case, you know, they dealt with that case a year before Sandra, and they were like, yeah, we already know how to do the cover-up. And I firmly believe that Sandra's case ended up being a dry run for John O'Keefe's case, because it was a conspiracy smaller. I mean, well, technically, when you think about the other men that could be out there, it's probably a lot bigger than Sandra, than John O'Keefe. But the core that we know, the Farwell brothers and Divine, and then the officers who covered it up, you know, it was a dry run. It was on a technically smaller scale when you don't include, you know, Heel, and Army Recruiter. Those are the ones that we know about. So it's a small, almost on a small scale in aspect of John O'Keefe. So it was a drive run. And I feel like they were like, yeah, we got this. We know how to do that. We just did it last year. And another thing I want to look at with when you compare both cases together, you know, the weather was used to cover up the crimes. The weather was used to In Karen, in Sandra's case, the weather was used to delay her being found. And also Matthew kind of used it as a way to, oh, I was only there for a little while. And he used, obviously, his child being born as part of his cover. But the weather, Sandra was murdered on the 1st, but she wasn't found to the 4th. So all these days in between, Sandra was sitting there. And it was because of the weather. If it was a normal, like if Monday was the first was a normal day, no snow, I'm sure Tuesday, the next day, they would have been like, oh, she didn't, no call, no show. She's not answering her phone. I believe by the 3rd, the morning of the 3rd, they would have sent an officer there. But because of the snow and there was like a foot of snow in Canton that day in Sandra's case. It wasn't considered a blizzard. It wasn't as much snow that happened on, what happened in the Okeefe case, but it was still a large amount of snow. So it delayed them trying to find out what was going on with Sandra. I think it just because of the snow and snow day, they had a snow day, and then, people getting back to work, and they probably just figured, oh, she's probably snowed in and she can't, maybe she lost power at a house and she can't charge her phone. They were probably just thinking, oh, she'll turn up. And by the 4th, they were like, oh, we need to check in on her. We're not able to get in contact with her. And the snow was used in John's case. It was used as an excuse multiple times. The crime scene couldn't be guarded because of the snow. We could barely find anything in the snow. I had to dig out of my house when there isn't that much snow. With Proctor and Buchanan, the snow was a factor in both of these cases. And it's just crazy that these two cases, Sandra was on February 1st, 2021, and then John was on January 29th, 2022. That's like a little bit less than a year, like a days apart from a year. And the snow is such a factor in both cases. And it shouldn't have been. I mean, these troopers work in the snow all the time. I'm not saying they find bodies in the snow. I'm not saying that. I'm saying living in New England, we know that we have to drive in the snow. And especially if you're a first responder, you're used to having to drive in the snow. So for them to use the snow in a way to help delay and cover up things, they were both used in both cases. And also in both cases, if you are part of the people who believe, like I do, that John Okeefe was murdered as a result of what happened in that house, both perpetrators would have been law enforcement. Obviously Matthew Farwell and obviously in John Okeefe, it would have been, Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, So it was also covering up for law enforcement. And I know these two cases are very, very different, but there's a lot of synergy, and there's a lot of, like I said at the beginning, connective tissue. The way these cases were handled, there's a lot of connective tissue, and not just because of that there are a lot of law enforcement crossover, just the fact how they were handled. And as a result, Karen, I hope to God she doesn't get convicted, because I feel personally, like I said, there might be people here watching who aren't in the chat. They might feel she's guilty. I am not one of those people. I am a Karen Reed supporter. But even if you aren't, you should be asking the questions that we are. You should be saying, why were certain things handled this way when you didn't handle it in the Brian Walsh case like this? You know, it's crazy. Talking about, let's go back to Tricky Nick Garino, for if you guys weren't here earlier. Hold on. Hi, thank you for being here. Thanks, guys. Thank you to everyone who's here. If you guys didn't hear my spiel at the beginning, please, even if you have to pop in and just pop right back out, please, 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 like, if you can, comment. If you're here the whole time, when I end this, comment on the video. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe, because excuse me, because as a small channel, those things really, really help. It helps push it out there, and it also just helps to make a channel look like it's thriving. So I appreciate, and I appreciate everybody being here tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So let's go back to Tricky Nicky. The fact that he couldn't find, the How Long to Die in the Cold from Jennifer's phone, when that's what Celebrate is for. Celebrate, and the fact that, and in Jen's case, it was deleted. I think Matthew Farwell factory reset his phone. I don't have proof of that. I'm sure the FBI will say it when Matthew goes to trial, but I think he factory reset his phone. And I believe there's a possibility, because they keep saying they got it off Sandra's computers. Well, why didn't they get it off the phone? So that part has always made me wonder, because they should have been able to get it off Sandra's phone too. But the computer, they wouldn't have to break into. The phone, they would have had to get a warrant to get into her phone. But going back to Tricky Nicky, the fact that he couldn't find, excuse me, my stomach's growling. I meant to eat a cereal bar before I popped on, but I forgot. The fact that he couldn't find, over 32,000 text messages. There were over 50,000 text messages with all three guys combined, but over 32,000 of those were just Matthew Farwell, and they were gone. And that's the only reason why I feel that he wouldn't have been able to find messages on that phone. But then they should have said that because what was put out there was, oh, he deleted all contact with Sandra, and he deleted everything. But if the phone was factory reset, they should have said that. We weren't able to get any information off his phone because he factory reset it, which should have been suspicious in itself. And so let me put on a video that I want to play. Just give me 1 second to bring it up. Hold on, of course. Come on, YouTube, load. Okay, it's starting to load. Maybe not. Come on, YouTube. The video I'm going to play is, I want to give a shout out to Joe Flipperhead. He gave me permission to use this video. It's a video that he made comparing the investigations. And there's one point I want to stop it. I'm going to stop a couple times, but it's so good. And I'm going to get dinged on the music, but I don't care. Let me see. Okay. Come on. Sorry, my YouTube is like running so slow for me to bring up this video. Come on. They're playing the commercial, but not playing the The video isn't even up on my page. You can hear it. Sorry, guys, it's gonna take me a second. I'm trying to get the. There we go. Oops, I'm sorry. I thought I had the video on the screen. I'm sorry, guys. Wow, what a bonehead thing. Hold on. I apologize. I hate the way things are set up because you have to go to another screen to get stuff played, and it's like sometimes you're just like chilling and you think you shared the screen, but I obviously didn't. Okay, take two. Oh, and there's going to be one point where I turn the sound off for a second. It's just because he did put a clip of Sandra's aunt when she found out about Sandra, and I don't want to play it on the channel.
We had a 23-year-old female pass away. I'm not sure the circumstances. The suspect was.
We now know that the body of a man found outside a home in Canton is that of a Boston police officer.
In the Sandra Birchmore case, a Stoughton woman who died under suspicious circumstances 3 years ago.
Officer John Okeefe, who was off duty, was found dead on Fairview Road yesterday morning.
Her death ruled suicide by hanging by the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. She was pregnant at the time.
O'Keefe's girlfriend is facing a number of charges in connection to his death, including manslaughter. Prosecutors say she hit him with her car last Friday night and drove away from the scene.
We're trying to get her case out there more so the medical examiner will open her case up more to take another look.
Birchmore's death originally ruled as suicide by the state's medical examiner.
O'Keefe was pronounced dead at Good Samaritan Hospital in Brockton. We found his death certificate on file at Brockton City Hall. The ME ruled the manner could not be determined, instead of writing accident or homicide.
But the acting U.S. attorney saying today, federal investigators started looking into Birchmore's death about a year ago, uncovering critical new evidence and re-examining old evidence.
Defense attorneys for Karen Reed dropping explosive new details in court Tuesday about the findings of a separate federal investigation looking into John O'Keefe's death.
Our investigation also uncovered additional evidence that is inconsistent with someone choosing to die by suicide.
Reed's defense attorney saying an independent expert concluded that O'Keefe's injuries were not consistent with the damage to Reed's vehicle.
Everybody loves the things you do.
And there could be some striking similarities here.
To the way you move. Everybody here is watching you. 'Cause you feel like home. You're like a dream come true. But if by chance you're here alone, can I have a moment before I go? 'Cause I've been by myself all night long, hoping you're someone I used to know. You look like a movie.
Good afternoon. On February 4th, 2021, Sandra Birchmore was found dead in her Canton, Massachusetts apartment. The charges filed today in federal court allege that she was in fact murdered by Matthew Farwell 3 days earlier.
I want to pause that right there for a second. Let me switch to here. You know how I said earlier, I don't really break down a lot. I kind of just keep my head going and you know, I don't break down a lot. Most when I break down is when I'm like watching a movie and, you know, something is said that makes me think of Sandra's case. And like, you know, when I'm trying to keep my mind off, you know, escape from it, and then like it pops in and like really hits me. It's also when I watch true crime and I see a police officer doing a lot of work for a victim, and I just, you know, it always makes me cry. Like I said, every time I start saying it, it makes me kind of tear up, because I always say, you know, I wish you had that. It makes me break down. But that whenever I hear that little part, like it really makes me like emotional. Just that day, whew, was a lot. I mean, it was everything that Barb and I worked for, but it was definitely an emotional, like crazy ride that day. And for somebody in law enforcement finally to say the things that I was saying and the things that Barb was saying, and, you know, the family and her friends, but, you know, because I was the face of the Justice for Sandra Birchmore group, excuse me, I was, you know, out there saying so much, and like almost everything I was saying was like so spot on. And just that when he starts saying that, it really gets me choked up.
And he used his knowledge and experience as a law enforcement officer to stage her death to look like a suicide.
You sound like a soul. My God, this reminds me of when we were young. Let me photograph you in this light in case it is the last time that we might be exactly like we were before we realized we were sad of getting old that made us restless. It was just like a movie. It was just like a song. I was so scared to face my fears, 'cause nobody told me that you'd be here. And I swear you moved overseas.
Back in 2021, with the information that was available, Senator Birchmore's death was ruled a suicide, or deemed a suicide. But over the last year or so, the FBI and our office have been working exhaustively with our state partners. We've uncovered critical new information, examined the existing information, all of which led to this federal grand jury indictment.
Sorry, commercial. Well, let me go in the app. Oh my God, my page just went here. All right, guys.
That's what you said when you let.
When I went to go fast forward it, my whole page went like collapsed down small. I'm like, what's going on? Okay.
Me, you still look like a movie.
The Emmy ruled the manner could not be determined instead of writing accident or homicide. Keep in mind, a medical examiner would have had access to all the reports and evidence that law enforcement had before making that conclusion.
Turning your attention to January 31st, 2020.
We pray that they would at least do that for Sandra. At least if they put it as undetermined, it would be so much better, but this medical examiner refuses to budge on it. That's why we're going to start putting some pressure on the medical examiner's office. And it's imperative that we do. We got to bring some weight on them, because, you know, the fact that her hyoid bone was broken, it should have made it a homicide. I don't know in what land, you know, and the other injuries that she had, it would have made it a homicide. The fact that her necklace was ripped off and broken, the fact that she had blunt force trauma to her upper chest that ended up in a indentation of the strap buckle, and the strap was up by her ear, her right ear, and the fact that she had abrasions on her nose. This medical examiner needs to quit her job, because she is derelict in her duties. And yeah, this isn't the first case that's happened. So, you know, them ruling in John's, saying it was undetermined, helps Karen's case so much. But on the other hand, it's wrong that it wasn't listed as a homicide, but it's good for Karen's case, because the Massachusetts State Police and the DA's office wanted that clarification so bad that they were willing to put pressure on the medical examiner. And from those text messages, even in then, like Proctor's disgusting text messages, you know, joking about putting pressure on the medical examiner, you know, that makes you wonder. And it makes me say, I bet that's what happened in Sandra's case, that they put pressure on this medical examiner to say, that's what we wonder. You know, like I just said, in Proctor's text messages, they were joking about thinking it was funny that Proctor was a rookie, you know, that he should have gave it to one of them so they could, I believe his name was DeChico, and I can't remember the other trooper's name, you know, that they should have gave it to them, because they could have got it, you know, got it in as a murder instead of excuse me, as undetermined. You know, I've wondered, you know, I've wondered before that, but seeing that play out on, you know, on my TV screen, I was like, oh my goodness, that's what happened. That had to have been what happened. And people got to understand that the medical examiner's office is an extension of the Massachusetts State Police. They should be a separate entity. They should be separate offices. They should be separate. They shouldn't be under the umbrella of the Massachusetts State Police, because things like this happen. They're beholden to the Massachusetts State Police. So, excuse me. Hold on, I just want to scroll up. Hugs to you too. Thank you. You know, Barb can use all the hugs that she can get. It's tough for me to be in this case all the time, but like I said, I can kind of mentally not remove myself from it, but you know, because I'm a third party, I'm not family, I wasn't a friend, so I didn't know Sandra, so I can almost, you know, not remove myself. I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but Barb, she has to sit in it every day, and it's tough. You know, Barb is a strong woman. It's tough when you're fighting for a loved one who was murdered, because you have to sit in that sadness every day. You have to sit in the the wonder, could I help? Could I have done this? But because you're working on the case every day, you don't get a break from it. And thank you for sending a hug to Barb, because she deserves all the hugs she can get. And like I've said before, I may be the face, but Barb is like the backbone. And if it wasn't for Barb, being there, I wouldn't have known as much about Sandra's case as I was able to learn. I had an inside player because she was a family member. And so I had something up on a lot of people who were talking about Sandra's case, because, I could say, hey, Barb, who's this? Who's this person? Do you know who that is? Do you know why this was done in her family? Do you know why her mom made this decision? And we were able to bounce it off each other. But because I had that inside track, Barb said it helps me to do whatever I can, try to move things along. Yeah, I mean, it's this, it brings sadness when you have to do it every day, but it also it's cathartic too. And because of working on Brandon Embry's case, I was able to learn how to do FOIAs. I hadn't done a lot of FOIAs. I'd only done a couple, but because I had done the work on Brandon's case, I was able to learn how to do FOIA requests. A lot of the cases I was working on, I was lucky enough to have the family members just turn over the paperwork to me. They had all the records, but in Brandon's case, they were withholding some stuff. So, and we wanted to see what I would get from the Asheboro Police Department. So I was able to do some FOIA requests there. So I knew how to do them. You just have to look state by state, because it's a little different in every state. But so yeah, Barb deserves all the heart and love and prayers that, like I said, not that other families don't sit in their sadness and their grief, but other family members can kind of walk away a little bit every day, or try not to think about it. Barb has to think about it every day, because in the morning she has to get up and check the Facebook page, so it's hard. I know it's hard on Barb. So, like I said, all the prayers and love that Barb can get is well appreciated. And I appreciate you guys, giving her so much love. All right, let's get back to this video.
22, did you have occasion to perform an autopsy in regard to a patient or a body of John Okeefe?
I did. This is a copy of the death certificate for Mr. John Okeefe.
Listing related to cause of death, what did you list as cause of death on Mr. Okeefe with regard to his death certificate?
Cause of death was blunt impact injuries of head and hypothermia.
And with reference to manner of death, what, if anything, did you list on Mr. Okeefe's death certificate in relation to manner of death?
I listed could not be determined.
Prosecutors have charged Okeefe's girlfriend, Karen Reed, with second-degree murder. They say she hit him with her SUV and left him to die in a blizzard.
Karen Reed led into court in handcuffs. She pleaded not guilty to second-degree murder in the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John Okeefe.
Lay dying on the front lawn of 34 Fairview Road, where the defendant had left him after striking him with her motor vehicle.
Reed's lawyers have been pushing back on that. They allege Okeefe was beaten severely and left for dead with injuries to both sides of his face and the back of his head. They also say he had wounds to his arms that look like dog bites.
Okay, so how does arm get up?
Because when his arm struck the taillight then cracked, and as the car is driving past him, the taillight could scratch it.
Got it. So he gets hit by the car, not his torso, just the arm. The taillight cracks, and as it passes by, his arm stays with it long enough to get striations. It does a pirouette, spin, counterclockwise, and flies 30 feet in the air to his point of rest.
Yeah, it happened probably a little faster than that, though.
Actually said he hit his head on the curb.
If he gets spun around kind of clockwise, there's a possibility that the curb is there.
How do you account for the fact that didn't suffer a broken bone? How do you account for the fact that he didn't even have a bruise? How do you account for the fact that he didn't have a fracture?
I don't know.
But if this case goes
I'm sorry. I just need to take a minute to laugh at Trooper Paul. Like, he was the most ridiculous person to testify. And there were some doozies, but like, he's a special kind of, yeah. I felt like I was at a comedy act. Like it was that ridiculous. And, or watching like one of those stupid, very like stupid comedy movies where it's just like ludicrous, and I felt like that's what I was watching, because it was just like, are you kidding me? This dude is saying all this. And that goes back to my point. John Okeefe deserved better. John Okeefe deserved a real accident construction. What am I trying to say? Accident reconstructionist to testify in his case. And this is who they bring. You know, like I said, they disrespected John in his death, just like they disrespected Sandra in death also. And you're not supposed to be doing that to victims. You're supposed to be, you know, getting all the answers that you can. And they didn't care to get the real answers. They didn't care. And by having that trooper get up there and say all his foolishness is proof that that's what they did.
Goes to trial, the medical examiner who performed the autopsy will most likely be called to the witness stand. The defense could ask if Okeefe's injuries appeared consistent with a car strike or something else.
And the injuries that you observed, would that be consistent with injuries that you observed in other cases of a pedestrian collision?
They're not the classic pedestrian injuries that we observe, no.
Want to try Ozempic?
Sorry, guys. I get more.
So this is Ozempic.
You still sound like a song. My God, this reminds me of when we were young.
Ought to talk today about new evidence from a federal investigator.
Right, Lisa. And according to the defense, the U.S. attorney's investigation includes evidence that the damage to Karen Reed's SUV was inconsistent with the victim's injuries.
Federal investigators hired, independent of us, we had no idea, and independent of the Commonwealth, hired a professional reconstructionist, 3 PhDs, to look into exactly this issue. Did Karen Reed's car, did her SUV make contact with John Okeefe? And their conclusion to a person was his injuries were inconsistent with the damage on the car. The damage on the car was inconsistent with having made contact with John Okeefe's body.
Well, again, the entity that retained us in this asked us to evaluate whether or not the damage to the vehicle and the injuries to Mr. Okeefe were consistent with the interaction or in interaction between the two.
So was the taillight damage consistent or inconsistent with striking an arm?
It was, our findings was it's inconsistent for a number of reasons. So both the physical evidence as well as looking at the biomechanical aspects of it are inconsistent with that head injury occurring due to impact with the rear of the Lexus.
Is the damage to the taillight that you saw consistent with striking a human head?
No.
In your expert opinion, is the damage to the taillight consistent with striking a human arm?
No.
Thank you. In other words, the car didn't hit him, and he wasn't hit by the car.
Oh, wait,
We do in this office what we've been doing for decades with our federal partners like the FBI. We follow the facts, regardless of where they lead. We apply the law and the principles of federal prosecution. Full stop.
Period. Full stop.
Okay. That's another way these two cases have, like, they're similar, where, you know, John O'Keefe's injuries weren't consistent with being hit by a car. and the damage on Karen's car wasn't consistent of hitting John Okeefe. Well, Sandra's body wasn't consistent of somebody who had done this to herself. It was consistent of being a young woman who was murdered. You know, with the hyoid bone broken, they said there was no struggle. I already went through the stuff, you know, the abrasions on her nose, the impression on her neck, on her upper chest, I mean, and the fact that that necklace was broken, her hair was all wound up in the ligature. So Dr. Swock pointed those things out. So both cases have this inconsistency in the findings of when it comes to their bodies and their injuries. And it's baffling. It's just like, you know, it is, but it isn't baffling, because we've been dealing with this for how long now? And it's kind of a joke that they think that we would take them seriously.
That's their independent expert.
Well, back in 2010, a 12-year-old Sandra Birchmore applied to join the Stoughton Police Department's Explorers program. Officer Matthew Farwell was an instructor in that program. And as alleged in court documents, he befriended Sandra Birchmore, contacted her online, went to the library with her, became friends on Facebook, essentially groomed her. And then he committed statutory rape by having sex with her when he was a 27-year-old police officer and she was just 15 years old. At the time of her death, Sandra Birchmore was a 23-year-old woman with her entire life ahead of her. And she was pregnant with her first child. And when it became clear to Mr. Farwell that he could no longer control Sandra Birchmore, he allegedly silenced her permanently.
It was just like a movie. It was just like a song.
This morning, a former police detective in Stoughton is charged with killing a pregnant woman.
People here at the Northgate Shopping Center in Revere couldn't believe their eyes when the FBI closed in and took the former Stoughton police detective into custody.
This cell phone video shows it culminated in this SWAT team arrest Wednesday morning of former Stoughton police detective Matthew Farwell. Investigators allege Farwell had an ongoing illegal sexual relationship with Sandra Birchmore, starting when she was just 15 years old.
It's a crying shame that we have these cops doing this stuff. I think he's a clown. He should never been doing what he was doing, and it's out of hand.
You could hear a pin drop in that Dedham, Massachusetts courtroom behind me. I mean, this is something that you've heard rumblings of, but when Yannetti actually said that there is an investigation that was confirmed yesterday during a phone call.
The Norfolk DA's office and the Karen Reed defense team participated in a conference call yesterday with a representative from the U.S. Attorney's Office. The U.S. Attorney confirmed during that conference call, confirmed for both parties, that not only has there been a federal investigation of this case, but it is ongoing. It's not over. It continues. The DA had this confirmed for them just yesterday, right from the horse's mouth.
And again, I want to make it very, very clear. I can't attest to the Karen Reed, John Okeefe situation, whether or not that they are looking into it. I believe they still are, but I can with 100% certainty say that they are still investigating Sandra's case. I can say that with 100% certainty. So that's why it's hard for me to believe that they stopped investigating, you know, John's case too.
It's hard to admit that.
Karen Reed's getting ready for trials. The feds are taking a look at the people who investigated the case and gathered the evidence that will be used against Karen Reed. This doesn't happen, folks. This is extremely unusual.
Court TV got a statement from the DE's office. Let's put it on your screen. They said this, quote, "No part of the communication with the Office of the United States Attorney yesterday or at any point has indicated that the Norfolk County District Attorney or any member of this office is the target of a federal investigation."
Between Sandra Birchmore and the Karen.
And I want to say, too, that it's very unusual that the FBI will take over two cases or look into two cases from a DA's investigation unless there's something wrong in that DA's office. For them to start looking into Sandra's case and for them to start looking into the investigation of John's case, that should give everyone pause to say, listen, something funky is going on in Norfolk County because it's not normal. Yeah, there are high profile cases like Derek Chauvin for when George Floyd was murdered. You know, the feds also tried them, you know, in Ahmaud Arbery's case, the feds also tried them. So it does happen where the feds and the DAs will also try, you know, that person in federal and state charges, you know, and that's why we keep saying, Morrissey, where are the state charges? Where are they? Because the feds turned over everything that they had to you. Why aren't there state charges? But it's not normal. There's nothing normal about any of this. Nothing at all.
Karen Reed case, supporters say they have a lot of questions about law enforcement, but not many answers.
Lastly, I want to note that we are sharing the information and the evidence that we developed in this case with the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, with the Massachusetts State Police, and with the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office, so they can assess whether state charges may be warranted in this situation.
Just takes me back to when you were there, to when you were there, and a part of me keeps holding on just in case it hasn't gone.
Finally, the FBI stepped up, got him, and now he's in jail right now waiting trial. Why the FBI had to go after and get Matthew Farwell, why didn't Michael Morrissey's office, and why didn't the Massachusetts State Police Unit under him get Matthew Farwell? But we still have a long way to go with her case to get other people under lock and key also.
Meantime, DA Morrissey's office did not respond to our request for comment.
They want justice for Sandra Birchmore and her unborn child. We're live in Stoughton. Erin Logan, NBC 10 Boston.
Let me photograph you in this light.
From Dedham to Natick, West Roxbury, Plymouth, and more. In more than 40 Massachusetts cities and towns, hundreds of people spent the holiday standing out, at times dancing, in protest of the prosecution of Karen Reed.
Signs of support everywhere on Sunday. One reading, Free Karen Reed, Justice for John Okeefe. Her family speaking out.
It means the world to our family to have complete strangers like this who, you know, obviously recognize that Karen's innocent, and they've all come together week after week.
Karen needs justice. John Okeefe needs justice, and he won't get it until Karen is free.
Everybody attached to this movement just wants the same thing, justice for John and the people who perpetrated this to go away.
All bringing attention at the same time to what's going on in Norfolk County and against Karen Reed.
What are you still doing here? You still have not downloaded Pi Adblock? You know I'm just going to keep showing up on your screen until you download.
The case of Sacco and Vanzetti, two guys who claimed that we were framed for murder. An extremely famous and notorious case that divided the public. And in the end, they were convicted. They were executed. But 50 years after that execution, the governor of Massachusetts made a proclamation and proclaimed them innocent men, Sacco and Vanzetti. But from the beginning, they claimed they were innocent and they were being framed for what happened. That trial was in Dedham, Massachusetts. Now in the same courthouse, in the same courtroom, Karen Reed is saying, I was framed.
Giving voice to the voiceless, ensuring that no one is above the law, protecting the vulnerable people of Massachusetts, that's the highest calling of people in law enforcement. And this case represents those principles without fear and without favor. We do in this office what we've been doing for decades with our federal partners like the FBI. We follow the facts, regardless of where they lead. We apply the law and the principles of federal prosecution. Full stop.
Why you so shy? Ain't like you to hold back or hide from the light. I hate to turn up out of the blue uninvited, but I couldn't stay away. I couldn't fight it. I had hoped you'd see my face and that you'd be reminded that for me it isn't over. Never mind, I'll find someone like you. I wish nothing but the best for you too. Don't forget me, I beg. I remember you say sometimes it lasts and loves, but sometimes it hurts instead. Sometimes it lasts and loves, but sometimes it hurts instead.
Start it over. What the heck? Oh no, it just. Sorry guys. Let me. My thing just separated the things. Sorry, as I went to click out of there, I don't know what's going on with my computer. It's being like haywire. I'm going to close this. It clicked out of, come on. It took it started a new page for the StreamYard. So now I have to reopen. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show the, hopefully it comes up. The end of my presentation. Yeah, I don't know why. Whenever he starts talking about the case, it really makes me choked up. It's. I think it's just because all the work that Barb and myself did, and not just us, our supporters and our team, and also people who came before, like Boston Globe's Laura Grimaldi and the guys from the case and the family doing the lawsuit. And, and I hate to say it, but the Stoughton Police Department for doing that investigation that they did. And then, like I said, Barb and I picked up the baton and we kept running with it. And, just whenever I hear him start talking about the case, it makes me tear up. And, that law enforcement cared, that this is what the Massachusetts State Police, should have cared. They should have cared about Sandra and they should have cared about John, and they didn't. And that was the face of somebody who cared about this case. And the women in the FBI office who really cared about Sandra and were dogged in their investigation, who are continuing to investigate, and the lawyers in the DOJ who were prosecuting this case, they cared. And, that's the thing that is my whole point of this stream. The Massachusetts State Police failed Sandra and John, and it's not fair. It's not right, and it's not just. And, I know for myself, and I can speak for Barb. Neither of us are going to stop fighting. We'll continue to work, through our arthritis, and me through my migraines and my fibro, and, anything that ails Barb, we're not going to stop. We are not going to stop. And actually, yes, everybody, what Bob just said, I co-sign that. The people who come to our standouts are amazing. And most of the people who come to our standouts are free Karen Reed. And, I'm thankful that there are a lot of other cases that, free Karen Reed said, this is all about Karen. But they allowed Sandra's case to be heard throughout the community, and they became part of our community. And we're so thankful to everybody who supported us. We're so thankful. And and our Facebook group, they're so supportive. And I know you're not on the X page, but it extends out to the people on X who support us and share. I can make a post. I literally hit send and go before my phone is even put down. I'll have like, and I'm like, I just hit send. It's amazing the support that we've that we've been able to garner, and we appreciate everybody, because it's important that people continue to share Sandra's story. Yes, Matthew Farwell has been charged and he's sitting in jail right now, but her story's not over. We still have the other guys that we want to be prosecuted. We want Matthew Farwell to be prosecuted for the abuse that he put upon Sandra, as a child. So this, we're still, like, when he was arrested, one of my favorite bands is called 30 Seconds to Mars, and they have this song called The End of the Beginning. And that's what I felt like. It was like we closed that chapter and we started writing the next chapter. And there's a lot more chapters of this book. I'm using that reference for you, Barb. It's all your years of being an editor. So, there's a lot of chapters in this book to be written, and we're not going to stop till everything is done. Like I said at the beginning, the way law enforcement failed Sandra and John, it's unacceptable. And we all need to keep, speaking out about that. We all need to keep putting it in their faces, whether it be calling or writing letters. If you can't make it to, a free Karen Reed standout or a Justice for Sandra Birchmore standout, there are ways you can help. We have stuff posted on our page. I'm going to refresh all that and like look through it and change it up a little bit to streamline it. I think I have too many people on there. I think it needs to be cut down, whittled down, so people can, figure out who they want to, or if they want to do all, maybe 5 or 6 places, like, Morrissey's office, the Camp PD, whatever entity, the governor's office, whatever. I want to make sure that we are continuing to put pressure on them, because it's so important that we keep putting pressure on them. Let me see. All attorneys worldwide see the issue within DA Morrissey's office instantly with a view of Sandra Birchmore's case. Exactly. There's a lot of attorneys that are backing Karen, but looking at Sandra's case, they see that, like, what went wrong here. It's yeah, I agree. I agree. Getting her elected is a right step in the direction, and that's what people need to start doing. You need to understand that we have power to elect people that we want to represent us, and to work for the people, not for themselves. And I think this is the first another step in the right direction of Canton being able to get rid of the old guard and bring in fresh faces and move Canton to heal and get to a better place. So I co-sign what you just said. So is there any questions that anybody has? I know Barb's been answering the questions in the chat. Oh, wait, before, again, Joe Flipperhead, thank you for allowing me to use your video. You did an awesome job. I really appreciate it. Is there any questions anybody has before I start wrapping things up? I know, like I said, I know Barb has been answering everybody's questions along the way, but if there's anything that you didn't ask and you want to ask now, please ask away. And then if not, I'll start doing my closing. But tomorrow morning starts Karen Reed's second trial. And, you know, we shouldn't be here. We should not be here, but we are. So all we can do is send her our love and support and keep pushing, you know, that these victims are not getting justice. What's happening right now is not going to get justice for either of them. You know, yes, luckily Sandra, Matthew Fowler was finally taken off the streets, but what's going on with the abuse portion of it, she's not getting justice for that. And they're allowing predators to slip through their fingers. And we can't allow that. You know, Sandra's case should be a cautionary tale to every mom and dad and teacher and, you know, coach and stuff out there, any mentor, that we can't allow, you know, fellow mentors to treat children this way, that we need to speak up when things happen. And we need to make sure that no other child ends up the way Sandra Birchmore did. No other child should go through any of what Sandra did. And that child's life should never end in murder. And I say child because it started when she was a child. And it continued till she was 23. AJK, you two are significant and amazing. Thank you so much. Myself and Bob appreciate that. Thank you. I felt that, you know, and I feel like Sandra was talking to me for months and I wasn't listening. And I kind of feel like Sandra went and whispered in Barb's ear saying, reply back, especially with my crazy photo. I feel like that she whispered in my friend Sarah's ear. So Sarah would say something to me to basically give me a kick in the pants to get the ball rolling. Because if I had waited, I feel like if I had waited and did things on my own time and speed, you know, we wouldn't be here. The public knowing about Sandra's case wouldn't be there. The public pressure wouldn't have been as big. You know, we mounted a campaign and we worked on it every day. Barb and I talk so much. I talk to Barb more than I do any of my friends and family. I talk to Barb every day. And then there might be once in a while, like sometimes, like on the weekends, sometimes we don't talk as much because we try to give each other a little bit of a break. You know, it's very quiet on the weekends, but, you know, we talk every day. And if, you know, anything we need from each other, we ask, we tell each other, let each other know. And that's why we've worked so well together. We're straight up with each other. And, you know, I feel like that, you know, no, thank you. I mean, yeah, I stepped up, but I've, like I said a million times, I'm just somebody with a big mouth. Anybody could do this. It just takes one person to open their mouth. So don't be scared. Yes, when you're dealing with the police, it can be a little scary, But when people stand behind you to back you, don't be afraid. Just stand up and say something. Yeah, I'm like I said, I have a big enough mouth. I had a big enough mouth to speak for me and Sandra, but anybody can do this. It just takes stepping outside yourself to do something. And I'm so glad Barb became my partner, you know, because things would have been different in that aspect too. You know, I had that connection to family through Barb, you know, and like I said, our partner. The other day, somebody said, "You guys are the perfect yin and yang," because like Barb's personality is more chill, and I'm more like in your face and loud, and you know, but it works. It's worked. It worked because that I was able to be the voice of the Justice for Sandra Birchmore group, because I am a vocal person, so I didn't have any problem going on all these shows and, you know, going on, you know, TV shows like Dateline, not Dateline, what the heck's the name of it? Banfield and Court TV, Vinnie Papolitan, you know, that's who I was trying to think of. You know, I didn't have any fear going on these shows because I don't have a big fear factor, but it's worked. What Barb and I have done, it's worked. And, you know, I'm just glad she's my partner in all this. Thank you so much, Barb. You know, it's been such imperative to this movement and getting things done for Sandra. Okay. If nobody has questions, I'm going to move to, yes, I'm going to move to get to my closing. Give me 1 second. Okay, let me zoom that in a little bit. Okay, good. And I will do me down here. I'll make it bigger. So it says, "Happy Heavenly Birthday, Sandra." And it's going to be in our next standout is May 17th in Stoughton from 1 to 4 p.m. This gives the address of Town Hall. We stand across the street from Town Hall, so that's why I give you the Town Hall as the address. You'll see us. There's a little triangle right across from Town Hall. That's where we, when we do standouts in most of the time when we do standouts in Stoughton, that's where we'll be. There's hopefully we get a good crowd. We would love to have a big crowd since it's our first one back after her memorial. We just hope we get a good crowd that day to pay tribute to Sandra. And like I said, we're going to have a contest for the best homemade sign. So there will be a prize. So, you know, like a party favor prize. So, you know, please, you know, come, and you don't have to buy a sign, just make one, you know, just get some poster board or a cork board and come on down and show off your homemade sign and maybe win a prize. So again, that's on May 17th from 1 to 4 across from Town Hall in Stoughton. And so, why is this going backwards? Hold on a second. Give 1 second. That's weird. Okay. It put my photos back in the wrong spots. So give me 1 second. Okay. So again, you know, I included Karen in this because, you know, she is a victim of Massachusetts State Police also. At least that's what I believe, you know, but mostly, you know, she's fighting for her life now. But Sandra and John both deserve justice. They deserved more than what the Massachusetts State Police gave them, more than the Canton Police gave them, more than Michael Morrissey's office gave them. They deserve justice because every victim deserves justice. And it's horrible that they didn't, that the way things went, Sandra almost didn't get justice. And in my opinion, John isn't getting justice right now. Whoops, wrong way. I have to skip around. Okay. So this is our logo. And, you know, everybody knows that I work tirelessly. I dedicate almost every day in minute, and I drive my family crazy with how much I talk about Sandra's case. But, you know, Sandra deserves justice, and we want to ensure that she gets justice. So justice for Sandra Birchmore. Keep her in your thoughts. Keep her family in your thoughts. Because, you know, once that trial comes up, they're going to need your thoughts and prayers, definitely. Justice for Officer John Okeefe. This trial that starts tomorrow, I personally don't believe that it'll ensure that John will get justice, but we need to keep his family in our thoughts and prayers because, you know, losing a loved one in the manner that John's life was taken, it's hard to deal with. And, you know, I know a lot of people don't care for Paul and Peggy Okeefe, you know, but they are still a family that is grieving and missing a loved one. And, you know, it's that always, you know, is something that I always feel for them. Like I said, you don't have to like their personalities, but you have to understand that, you know, they did lose a loved one, and it's sad. Hold on. When Michael Morrissey loses the election in 2026, the new DA will commence with a proper investigation of what happened to Okeefe, and hopefully Sandra too. You know, both cases need to be looked into. Audits need to be done of both cases. You know, what happened in both of these cases is unacceptable, and the public should be outraged. And free Karen Reed. You know, I'm going to end with Karen because, you know, her trial starts tomorrow. And she needs all our thoughts and prayers. And like I said, if you're somebody who doesn't think she's innocent, that's your choice. I choose to believe that she's, from what I've seen of the evidence, you know, starting with John's injuries, especially since the work I did on Brandon Embry's case, and he had a similar injury, and I know how much blood there was. And yes, they were different scenes. You know, John was outside and Brandon was in a cold, wet apartment because he was laying in water, and the temperature was turned down because he liked his apartment cold. So it would have, you know, but it wasn't obviously as cold as it was for John. But those injuries, when I saw them, I knew something was wrong. You know, I'm hoping things come out in this case, in this trial that starts tomorrow, that proves that there's nothing anybody, once things are left, everything's left on the floor and the whole trial is said and done, that Karen can walk away with an acquittal. Karen can walk away with an acquittal, and there'll be evidence to open a lot of people's eyes. And like I said, my thoughts with, Karen as she's ready to start her trial, and my thoughts with the Reed family, having to go through this again, but you guys are a strong family. Karen's a strong woman. And my thoughts are with, the Okeefes and the friends of John Okeefe. My heart goes out to them too. But I want to end with free Karen Reed, because didn't talk about Karen a lot in this, but I wanted to end with it, that, free Karen Reed. So I want to thank everybody who came and watched tonight. Thank you for joining me. I know there's a big fundraiser going on Glaire's show, so if you want to scoot over there after, I don't know how to teleport people from here to there, but he's easy enough to find, the Glaire. He'll be going to, I believe, midnight, so he's got a couple more hours. And if you want to go over there and help him raise some funds for Karen, kudos to you. And I appreciate anybody donating to Karen. I'm not putting that in the chat, unfortunately, just because I made promise to the family that I won't take any money, and I won't. And I want to state that I did let them know when I was going to start doing lives on my channel that there is one episode that I will, we will do cash apps, and that's when we cover the Brandon Embry case. And we'll only be talking about Sandra at the very, very beginning, because Sarah's what really pushed me to, start working on Sandra's case. So I'm going to end this. Again, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the replay crew. It means a lot to me. And again, when you close this out and the stream is done, make sure, if you can, go make a comment on, about the show. But make sure, if you're not following me, please hit subscribe, and make sure you like this when you're done, because it means so much to help a small creator to get their views up and their counts up. And everybody being here, and anybody who's on the replay crew, it means so much to me. Thank you, Barb, for being excuse me. Thank you, Barb, for being in the chat and moderating. Thanks, guys. I am Mizzy, and I'm a mixed girl. Oops, actually, let me go to here. Thank you, guys. I forgot that I was on that other screen. It means the world that you guys were here to watch and to be here for the stream. And thank you so much. I am Mizzy, and I'm a mixed girl in a mixed up world. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.